to reconsider the suspension of the Auditor General and a deputy. In the consortium's words, this decision came as a shock to the public, especially that there is limited information for this action. We are particularly worried that this action undermines public accountability, which is fundamental for good governance and development. It further hampers efforts in maintaining fiscal discipline and accountable use of public resources. The Consortium of Progressive Political Parties in Sierra Leone Corp stated in their own press release dated Friday, 12 November 2021 that, sadly, the Auditor General's office, which has demonstrated credibility, independence, and impeccable professionalism through successive regimes, now seems to be under attack by the SLPP government. The 50-50 group in their press statement noted with grave concern and utter dismay the sudden and indefinite suspension of the Auditor General, Mrs. Lara Taylor-Pierce, and her deputy, Mr. Tamba Momo, pending an investigation. The Renaissance Movement Sierra Leone expressed its unease about the timeliness of the suspension by President Julius Maada Bio, while the movement is yet to receive details of the reasons behind the suspension. It calls on the government of Sierra Leone to immediately inform Sierra Leoneans about the reasons for this drastic action that has sent a shockwave across the country. In their release, the Sierra Leone Bar Association stated as, the public awaits the official confirmation of the suspension. The Sierra Leone Bar Association expresses deep concern over the developing news story, noting the important role of the Audit Service Sierra Leone. In its reaction, the Institute for Governance Reform stated that they find it particularly difficult to understand this decision, and given the reputation that the Auditor General has built over the years, we are appalled by this move, particularly coming just weeks before the release of the annual audit report. IGR went on to urge the government to disclose the reasons for her suspension and take steps to speedily resolve this situation. Opposition Member of Parliament and former presidential candidate of the National Grand Coalition, Honorable Kande Kole Yumkela, tweeted, "This unprecedented and unfortunate decision is tantamount to an attempt to silence her and interfere with her independence a few days before the release of the 2020 audit report. It is another nail in the coffin of accountability and democracy." The tribunal has been set up. Following the setting up of the tribunal, Basita Michael resigned from the Judicial and Legal Service Commission, questioning the independence of the commission, stating the absence of the presentation of any allegations of misconduct to the commission. It ought not to have agreed to the setting up of the tribunal. She also questioned the process of selection of the tribunal members. Tonight, we will look at the consequences of the suspension and the legal route used. My name is Samuel Wise-Bangu, and this is AYV on Sunday. All right, good evening and welcome to AYV on Sunday on Channel 33 on TV, on Radio FM 101.7. And today we're talking about the Auditor General's indefinite suspension. This evening I have with me in the studio lawyer Francis Gabidon, a legal expert who is here to share with us his expertise on the legal routes used by the President to suspend the Auditor General. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir.
Have lawyer Augustine Soisembe Mara, who is another legal expert and a good governance advocate to also help us, put into perspective the suspension and the setting up of the tribunal. Good evening and welcome to the show, Augustine. All right, I have a media expert who's been following this and has been writing a series of articles with regards to the Audit Service and the Auditor General, and according to employ to actually, play down the office of the Audit Service. Lawrence Williams, good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Samuel.
All right, we're with a member from the government, especially the presidential spokesman, to join the conversation. But we move on. So you're watching and listening. Remember, you can always make your contributions to the program by commenting on our AYV Facebook page. You can find us on the Africa Young Voices Media Empire Facebook page. Alternatively, you can phone in when we open the call line later, and the number to do so would be announced shortly. But let me start off with you, Augustine. I mean, you've tweeted about the suspension, and the setting up of the tribunal again has sent some controversies. What do you make first of a suspension with regards to the legal provisions as to how it should be done and where we are?
Thank you very much, Samuel. I think, in all honesty, we need to back up a little bit and examine, what were the precipitants, if you may, of this suspension.
Right.
No doubt, one of the most respected professionals that we have in Sierra Leone. I did an article on suspension,
right,
and my view is so elaborately made known to the public. But just to say that, in terms of the Auditor General, really, there's been a number of concerns. Remember quite clearly, many women's rights groups who are then come out to say that the Auditor General should be protected,
right,
in the dispensation of her duties.
Right.
Right. So it's sad that few months down the line, we shockingly received news of the suspension. I mean, that's normal. Administrative law, Gabriel is by far my senior, attest to the fact it's normal. In administrative law, once you've been investigated, you're suspended. But as always, there is a procedure spelled out in the Constitution. And the Auditor General, for goodness sake, is one very peculiar public officer, to such an extent that it is the only office that is accorded the protection of the very same protection given to the judges. And you would know that the judges, they occupy the judicial lever of government.
Right.
They check the executive. Usually the executive, they are always excited, overreach of powers and whatever.
Okay.
So
let me a little bit hold you there. I see online viewers are complaining about your sound. Let me hold you there while our sound technician work on that. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
consistent concerns regarding the office of the Auditor General. I recall many leading, women's rights activists who come out to say that she ought to be protected, etc., etc. And there was an apparent bullying and harassment of this much respected public servant. And so, just to make the point that there is nothing wrong if somebody is being investigated, you suspend them.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong. But in terms of the Auditor General, there's a whole procedure. And that procedure applies to the judges of the judiciary and I think she's the only public servant who is not a judge, who is accorded the same protection of her office equal to the judges. And so the Constitution is very clear in terms of how, for example, complaints are made and how the investigation should be done. And I said in my piece, in no uncertain terms, that a suspension is unconstitutional.
Right.
And also a suspension is an affront to a democracy. And I say that for two reasons. Firstly, the Constitution is very clear. You know, this talk about whether, there's a complaint, we have to examine who initiates the complaint. As far as the Constitution is concerned, it is the Judicial Legal Service Commission that notifies the president of a complaint, right? And as soon as that notification is made, the president now is charged with the responsibility to set up a tribunal, right? And once the tribunal is set, suspension is triggered.
And here is the reverse, the suspension.
No, forget about the suspension for once. Go back to where the complaint came from.
Right.
So the complaint came from the office of the presidency to the commission. It doesn't work like that. Should emanate from the commission notifies the president
of the complaint.
There are serious concerns regarding the conduct of the Auditor General, and that these concerns ought to be investigated. So in actual sense, they would ensure that the threshold of investigation is met by their own assessment. So it's not for State House to conduct their assessment and charge them with a responsibility. And what we've seen is just a complete, for want of a better word, complete haphazard procedure. And you may want to say, well, you know, it's just the same. She's been investigated. No. Why procedures are spelled out in Constitution is to ensure that there is constitutional decorum. Is to ensure, and that's why that is even what they call rule of law. So it's not only the law, it's how the law is being applied. So once you misapply the law, it's unconstitutional. So once the initial step, the manner in which the tribunal is set up is faulty, it means that the entire proceedings is a waste of time.
You also submitted that, the entire decision to suspend her indefinitely is an affront to democracy.
Correct, yes.
Now, how is that?
I tell you what, our democracy is not built on the shoulders of one man. It's not built on, and I've said this many times, it's not built on the shoulders of State House. No, we're getting it wrong. Our democracy is built on institutions. And believe you me, if you were to do a random sampling of views of citizens, they will tell you that the Auditor General and the Audit Service alone has stood out as one of our best integrity institutions in this country. And the excellence of that institution has been because of the consistent, excellent audit reports that would really expose the financial indiscipline of government.
Right.
That's not just this regime, before the last regime, etc., etc. So that institution has been built to ensure that they place a check on the excesses of the executive lever of government, right? And the Auditor General and our staff, they have earned the trust of the public. So that institution has been one of the strongest pillars of a democracy. I tell you what, if we don't have a very serious audit service, the executive would go into a spending spree, and nobody would investigate them. Nobody would cause them to account. So at the end of the day, once you have that institution that places a check, a limit on executive discharge of power, it means that we have a very solid institution. But once you begin to indefinitely suspend the head of that institution and a deputy in a manner that offends the Constitution, it means you're crumbling that institution. It means you're not inspiring confidence in folks, across other institutions who would want to stand out, who want to stand up and say, let's do right. They would merely say, well, a lawyer has been doing right for God knows how long, and see what's has been done to her. So what you do is that you kill institutions overnight. And once you kill institutions, you crumble a democracy.
Lawyer Gabidon, Augustine has given a red card to the president, describing his decision as unconstitutional. And you're on record, you've given it a green card. I mean, it's okay for him to go on. So on what grounds? I mean,
on the grounds that the Constitution makes provision for it.
Right.
You see, what has been happening in Sierra Leone, with respect to my learned friend who I have so much respect, in Sierra Leone, we're very good friends. I think there's a lot of mixing of politics with law in Sierra Leone. Not him, but we do not separate the two. And people, either because of their own attitude or their own volition or whatever it is towards a particular person or person, it's very difficult to see them doing anything correct. In England and America, you might have people who don't like Trump or Biden. But if Trump or Biden does something, they will defend him, even however unpopular they are. So let me put it this way.
Yeah.
I have looked at the Constitution, and he will tell you, when you're construing the Constitution, it's different from when you're construing an ordinary statute. He will understand, I will understand, which a lot of these people who are not lawyers will not understand. Yes, sir. Construing the Constitution is different. There are certain principles when you construe the Constitution which does not apply. It's much more, you know, as I say, I don't want to go into the depth of that. And I think what has happened, a lot of people, I'm not looking down on them, but we now have, everybody's a lawyer now in Sierra Leone. They just talk.
I know you're protecting your profession.
I have to, because I went to some of the best schools in England. I had a good degree. Just like we both talk. I know what I'm saying. But I can listen to a few people, but then I see some people making comments. I say, well, there's freedom of expression. What can I say? I have looked at this Constitution.
Right.
I've looked at it again. I've looked at it again. I agree with him. Suspending the Auditor General is very unprecedented. It is unprecedented. But she's not infallible, let's be honest. I say she's not infallible, which means nobody is infallible, except you have some form of immunity. Even the president can be impeached. There is provision of that. So I think we are taking this thing to the extent, I know her personally. I know the lady. She's extremely good, highly respected locally and internationally. But I'm sorry to say, if you ask me whether the decision was unconstitutional, I think it's wrong.
So what are the provisions to back your support?
It's the section in the Constitution. It's there. Look at the Constitution. It says there that the president has the power to suspend her or to suspend even a judge. So there is provision. The Constitution is the highest body. Sierra is not under parliamentary supremacy. We are under constitutional supremacy. So once the Constitution says X, if you have to go according, and we are not in a country where you can go and strike it down, except if people want to go to court and say, well, I think the president is wrong, I'm going to. As far as I am concerned, I have looked at this Constitution. If you ask me, you might not like it, it might be unprecedented, but to say it is illegal, I'm sorry, sir, I don't agree with that. It is not illegal.
Yes.
I think the issue is not the fallibility or infallibility of a human being. And I agree with him that you can be the most excellent professional, but everybody does have their own foibles, right? But the point is, and Mr. Gabidon has alluded to the Constitution as being the supreme document.
Right.
And that's why folks would meet me and say, are you not afraid to say that the president was wrong? Why? The Constitution is greater. The Constitution is superior to every organ, it is. Every person. And then some of us studied law, not to fear, but to ensure that rules, procedures enshrined in the Constitution are complied with by every institution.
With no specific, section referenced. Lawyer Gabidon is saying the Constitution gives the president the power. I mean, the process is everything is okay.
Yes. So what I'm saying, we're not questioning the fact that the president does have the power to suspend. We're saying that in this case, by the procedure adopted, which is a reverse of what the Constitution prescribes. The Constitution says that the Commission notifies the President. There's an issue of misconduct which ought to be investigated. Once he receives the notification, he then sets up a
from the Judicial and Legal Service
Judicial. So what we have seen is that, and quite clearly the documents speak to the fact that the Judicial Legal Service Commission was contacted by the Deputy Minister of Justice. As at the time they were contacted, the Auditor General had already been suspended. So you see quite clearly that the procedure enshrined in the Constitution has not been complied with. And once there's a misstep, once you have a constitutional misstep, it means that the action is wrongful and unconstitutional. So it's not that we're questioning
the powers
saying
of
that
the
president does not have the power to suspend. Right? He does have the power to suspend, but that power is circumscribed by procedure. So that procedure in this case has not been met.
Lawyer Gabidon,
has not been met.
I'll bring you in again on that.
No, I'm not fussy about it. What, do you want me to reply to him?
I want you to look at whether or not you still hold the grounds that, yes, the president has the power to suspend, but the procedures.
You see, what he's saying is what I think a lot of people say. In other words, even if she should have been suspended, the timing was wrong. I've heard that argument.
What do you think?
Let me put this way. Probably, yes, the timing was wrong, but if you look at it properly, the president is not even bound to suspend. It says may. When you look at the Constitution, he's not bound. So, in fact, that's another interesting one.
Right.
Not so sorry.
Yes, I agree, man.
So, in fact, I don't know where I went. He could have sort of folded his hands and left it. So, you see, the problem is we don't have the sort of courts to test these sort of things. If it was Nigeria, probably, you would have gone to, he would have gone
a long time.
So you see, we have this
lacuna. Papers lying,
these are the lacuna in the law, because the question is, as he says, yes, he has a power. In other words, the timing is wrong. Probably if somebody had gone to court to ask the Supreme Court either for an opinion or to say, yes, the president has the right, but the timing was wrong, that's another matter. I still think that when you look at the holistic angle of the Constitution, taking all into consideration, the timing might be late, but I don't think that could stall the process, except you go to court and take an injunction or take some other process. I think even if it's taken up at the tribunal, probably the tribunal might save it. Well, I don't think you can delay the tribunal because of the timing. Okay. I mean, that's my answer.
But that beside, Samuel, I hate to interject. I will just make the point that I come from, I'm a lawyer activist. I come from an activist background. I always share this, that you, for example, when you had apartheid, it was legislated, it was law, it was, but I always tell folks that you did not require a judgment from, let's say, the Constitutional Court of South Africa or the Supreme Court of South Africa to say that apartheid was wrong. There are certain wrongs that you don't need any court judgment.
And this is one of them.
Characterize them as an activist as a wrong. And I've said this in the case of Sam Sumana. Before he was taken to court, I inspired the protest by the Bar Association. I did not wait for the Supreme Court for a position. There are certain wrongs that you need not wait. Would you wait for the court to have a determination on slavery? No. On apartheid,
citing Sam Sumana's saga, that begs the question. If we're to go by that, I mean, looking at the supreme power of the president, the supreme executive power, again, would you want to say, oh, I mean, there's judicial president here, the president has excessive power? I mean, that's a goal.
No. I tell you what, in constitutional law, once you have what they call specific and explicit provision, general powers do not apply. Right? Once there's a procedure spelled out, you cannot use general powers of supreme executive authority.
May I say something, sir?
Yes,
you can.
There are some lawyers who are criticizing what the president has done. But when Sam Sumana was, they did not say a thing. Now you start to see the hypocrisy in this country and the two-foot or two-faced type of people. I'm not going to call names. They did not say that was even more serious than this, because you do not suspend or expel or throw out a vice president. Well, how many lawyers? How many of those who are complaining? I'm not saying two wrongs make a right.
Right.
Where were they? That is why I said don't mix politics with the law. One of the reasons why both of us get on is, even if we disagree, we have a healthy respect for each other. Unlike some other lawyers who I have no respect for, because they're all politicians.
No, no,
Choose not to mention.
I don't want to call their name. They're politicians.
Right. All right. Let me bring in Lawrence.
They're politicians.
Lawrence, there was a time when, there was this saga between the Audit Service and the Ministry of Finance as to how resources generated from by the Audit Service should go into the Treasury single account, and there was this call for our independence, or questions around our independence. Should, those monies go into the single treasury account, and you would always have to go back and ask for things and all of that. And we saw where that, that put the office and the Ministry of Finance. And you came out, you wrote an article and put out reasons and accusing the government of trying to undermine the process of accountability and transparency. And when Augustine was making his precursory remark, he mentioned, there are things that led to where we are today in this entire saga. So take us through, you've also written a recent article, which I've gone through, but take us through where do you come in, especially you've been following this particular issue for the longest of time.
Yeah, I actually want to speak to few issues raised by the previous two speakers before I actually delve into that. Mr. Gabidon has always maintained that people are conflicting politics with the law.
Right.
I want to say that the Constitution of Sierra Leone has been largely bastardized by succeeding governments. That is why so many people have become interested in this constitution. That is why we have so many street lawyers giving their own interpretation of this constitution. And because certain actions or decisions by government are taken on political basis, that is where the conflict, the political conflict, the politics comes in conflict with the law. And this particular decision, as regards the suspension of the Auditor General, was taken purely on a political interest base.
And not on law or governance.
My friend, if it was supposed to be a lawful decision, the government ought to have followed the due process, the procedures are spelled out in the Constitution. And let me remind our listeners and viewers that the EU, follow me in their report, they strongly advised the government against the use of excessive powers. They strongly advised against that. It is there in their report, I think the second to last paragraph. Now to the issue. Permit me to lay a premise.
Go ahead.
The Audit Service, as we all know, since the appointment of Lara Taylor Pierce as Auditor General, has lived up to public expectations. And let me also restate here, because I've stated it times without number, that auditing is not a witch hunt exercise, and the Audit Service is not a witch hunt entity that goes into MDAs and government institutions to go and witch hunt to how they spend money. No, 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 no. I'll come to explain the audit process and how firms are even contracted to work for the Audit Service. The audit reports have been coming out. And we all know that Audit Service has been doing a very great job. To the point that even when the government sets up its GTT, the Governance Transition Team, most of their findings were referenced to the audit reports. And in the commissions of inquiry, those prosecuted, or should I say the states relied heavily on audit reports to prosecute persons of interest. We all know the outcome. Now, when President took up office, he signed Executive Order number 1 to consolidate the various accounts of MDs, these treasury single accounts. And the FS then wrote, the FS in the Ministry of Finance.
Like the financial sector.
Yes, Sajusu, wrote to the President, copied all MDs, revenue-generating institutions that they are supposed to deposit all monies generated into the TSA.
Right.
The audit service alone is not a revenue-generating institution. It's not a revenue-collecting agency. It does not collect money for and on behalf of government. And
but it does collect money.
No. Let me tell you, it's about retained fees or so.
Yes.
Now, the audit service alone delegates authority to firms to conduct audits for and on behalf.
Private firms, you mean?
Yeah, these firms, they have set criteria. If you will permit me, Samuel, let me go through that quickly. Yeah? Now, if you go to Section 21 and 22 of the Audit Act of 2014, set out or spells out the procedures, how firms can be contracted to audit for to conduct audit on behalf of the audit service. These firms, the audit service is not procuring their services. So it's not something that they have to go through procurement processes. Yeah? Now, let me explain the steps. Step 1, potential audit firms who are required to express their interest to audit for the audit service alone, we actually do an expression of interest to the Auditor General to perform such tasks, which is a delegated authority or delegated responsibility, given to them. Step 2, the audit service, the Auditor General will now minute the application to the Deputy Auditor General, Finance and Administration, in charge of Finance and Administration, and Public Enterprises for necessary action. The step 3, this Auditor General for General Finance and Public Enterprises will now engage the training division to send out applications, the applicant's profile request form, which will be completed and returned to the Auditor General. Step 4, upon receipt of the completed firm profile, the Auditor General, in charge of Finance and Public Enterprises, will now request the Quality Assurance Committee to perform an assessment of the firm based on predestined questionnaires. Step 5, the outcome of the assessment is evaluated and a report issued to the audit firm with an evaluation conclusion. Now, in ensuring that the element of transparency and fairness is adhered to, upon completing the firm assessment and passing the audit service evaluation, the Deputy Auditor General in charge of Finance and Public Enterprises will now communicate in writing to the contracting audit firm that it has been included on the audit service loan database of contracting firms. Right. Now, when they go, the audit service loan does not pay these auditing firms directly. They go to, they negotiate the cost or the fee to be paid by the auditee to these firms. And the firms are informed, that we have negotiated the cost based on the workload, the time frame for conducting the audit, etc. They negotiate the cost, and they now tell the firm that this is what you are going to be paid. So in essence, the money does not come straight to audit service. It goes straight to the auditing firms.
All right, so let's look at it this way. You've submitted that the audit service Sierra Leone has been harassed by this regime. But if you look at what this regime has put forward in terms of arguments, the SIPP government has said, in fact, they've increased significantly budgetary allocation to the audit service Sierra Leone. And the government will tell you it is the first government that has summoned all MDAs, got them to sign a memorandum of understanding that they would implement every recommendation from that audit institution. And that is to tell you that, we've always been in support, and we know the critical and crucial role the audit service, Sierra Leone, plays when it comes to accountability and transparency. So the government will tell you they've always been supportive of the drive of the audit as of the audit service, Sierra Leone, as an independent institution. So where do you come when you say, the government has not been okay with the audit service, Sierra Leone? Where are you coming from?
Let me set the record straight.
Go ahead.
2 weeks, I guess it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks to the publication of the 2019 audit report and that of the COVID-19 audit report. The FS wrote back to the office of the president, threatening to, the FS wrote to the audit service, threatening to stop the budgetary allocation to that office if they do not comply with Executive Order number 1. But prior to that, the then Secretary to the President, Dennis K. Vandy, had given...
Who's now Minister of Agriculture?
Yeah, Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance, yes.
After inquiring from the President, wrote to the Audit Service that the Audit Service is not a revenue generating or revenue collecting agency, and therefore it was not bound and should not be bound by the dictates of Executive Order number 1. The then Solicitor General in the office of the Attorney General Justice Ministry also expressed in writing similar view that the Audit Service should not be bound. In fact, it should be accorded a higher pedestal of independence than that accorded to other agencies of government. And the reasons are obvious. Now, when the report came out, the 2 reports, government was very, very angry. We all know, we were present at the press conference in the Ministry of Information when the FS and OS, Sajuso and few others were there, saying all sort of things that you don't conduct audit process this way, you don't take previous audit that you have conducted for previous for 2-3 years and bring it to this audit report and blah blah blah. But he fails to understand that there are priority institutions that they have to audit every year, and there are certain institutions that the audit service will audit probably, let's say, once in 3 years because of the volume of money they handle and so. Right. So they have to bring all of those ones. Now, when there was
also conflict between the audit service and the ACC.
Yeah, that one relates to the COVID-19 audit report, which the ACC, its defensive position, was somehow, should I say, very defiant or reluctant to accept that these findings were true, accurate, and correct. The issue of the 50 kVA, that was where the problem lies. Yeah? He challenged the Auditor General that they went and conducted their own findings, and they discovered that it was 65 kVA generator, and that the processes are the same, or the findings are the same, but the conclusion, that in his words, the words of the commission, the findings are the same, but the conclusions are different. Now, the audit report, it is stated there that the auditors, when they went in, when the ACC said that generator at Zimi, was 65, when the auditors went in, it is stated there, they first inquired from the in charge, the previous in charge of the hospital, who was there since 2018, and the current in charge. They spoke to the auditors. They told the auditors that they did not receive any 50 kVA. And in fact, the Chinese embassy, go to their website, the information presented to the public is 50 kVA white generator. The one the SEC is claiming is 65. Let's accept there is a variation in kVA. There should not be a variation in color. That one is white, SEC's is red. So it's green, sorry. Yeah. It's green. And you see the old picture, You cannot compare. You cannot say that one is a brand new generator.
But that is,
no,
that
is just one.
That was just one.
But there are several other issues.
The issue of the computers.
But those computers, those are infinitesimal issues. Samuel, go to that report. I delved into that report and wrote several pieces, right? There is one agency, one construction company, who was awarded a catering services contract up to over 2 billion leones. And there was no evidence that the services were delivered. You gave a construction company a contract for the provision of catering services as if they are food engineers. No.
The company was said to be a general merchandise.
And also, there is one issue we should bring out to the public. Many times when auditors go in, before they go in, the entry, they send in management letters, telling them, notifying the agency. They meet face to face with the agency, with the auditees. The top management of the audited institution, this is prior to the auditor, is just the entry point. They meet face to face, they agree on which and what areas to audit, which documents, what will be the role of the auditee and the role of the auditors. So they also agree on a time frame and everything. That one is put on paper. It is put on paper. At the end of the day, they will not provide supporting documents, they will not provide evidences and so on. But if those issues come out after the report, in fact, before the reports are published, when they find or discover any adverse findings, they will revert to the institution.
Right.
When they revert to the institution, they say, this is what we have found out. Can you please provide supporting evidences to justify X, Y, Z? We need clarifications on these issues. They don't have it. And so those issues are now featured in the report.
There was a time I had a conversation.
Please, I beg. When these reports came out, when these reports do come out, you now see, let's say ACC or Parliament handles it. You now see institutions bringing in receipts, bringing in. Where were those receipts? Where were they? We all know in this digital age, I can fake anything. So if you cannot provide them at the time of the audit, it's a logical conclusion that you might have gone ahead to falsify documents and present it now to Parliament and so on. There was one instance in Parliament, it's last year or year before, when Honorable Tawa presiding over the Transparency Committee found out that certain documentation submitted, especially receipts for payment or procurement services or whatnot, the firm or the institution or the business place that was contracted to provide that services does not exist. These are issues.
Definitely, these are issues we would have to look at. Unfortunately, we are yet to have a rep from the government. But in one of our sister shows, the Wake Up Sierra Leone show, we had Keke Toma here responding to questions around the suspension of the Auditor General. So let's have a short clip of Keke Toma's submission on why governments decided to suspend the Auditor General.
The Audit Service Alone is a public institution led by public officials. Whilst we recognize that in the exercise of their functions and their duties, they should not be subjected to any control by any personal authority, when allegations are being lodged, are being made, I think the President has the responsibility to use the processes spelled out in the Constitution for those allegations to be inquired into. And I think that is the important thing. It's because at the end of the day, what we need, you and I, what we need is to have Audit Service as an institution, which obviously is very credible, is above board, is also above allegations which have been made. And even for the Auditor General and a deputy as well, I think it's both proper if allegations come forward, they have an opportunity for them to defend themselves or for them to respond to those allegations. And I think the Constitution makes provisions for that.
But there is a board, one could imagine, you know, of the Commission. One could imagine with the due process, if there are complaints, The Auditor General needs to understand what are these complaints, what she's done or what the deputy has done. And if the board cannot handle it, then it escalates to the president. But the auditor is saying she doesn't even know what she's done. She's been told that she should go on suspension and wait for a tribunal.
So that is why we have a process for the tribunal. So in fact,
let's agree on following that process first.
So you cannot agree to follow a process which to lay down in law. There is nothing in law. There is nothing in law to tell me or to say here, as Gabriel has said, that is a process that should be followed. What we have done is that. Hold on, let's give an opportunity.
Common sense or say common practice. Well, is it not good that if people are making complaints about me, I need to understand that they're making complaints about me and I'm being suspended for a certain reason, rather than just send me and not telling me why I'm being suspended?
Of course you will be told. Like I said to you, there is nothing laid down in the law on what you have done which is wrong. Of course, what happened was a letter was written to the chair of the board, and the chair of the board indicating that these allegations obviously have been lodged, and therefore the process is that by section 137 subsection 6 she will go on suspension. But before even that, when these allegations came forward, the president by section 53 subsection 1, because in fact I understand the former Attorney General was saying the Deputy Minister of Justice does not have that power. Section 53 subsection 1 clearly spells out that President can exercise his executive authority either directly or through cabinet ministers, deputy ministers, or other public officials subordinate to him. It's clear in the Constitution.
So is this clearly the use of executive power?
No, what we are saying is not being used by executive power. What I have been mentioned was to address one of the issues you raised, which the former Attorney General said the deputy minister did not have the power.
What are the allegations?
Okay. So now, because it's a process that obviously has been triggered by law, Francis Gabidon is here, it is not proper, it is prejudicial for us to obviously come, because I know many people have been saying, oh, what are the allegations, what are these, but we also have a responsibility to make sure. So we have a balancing act. Do we make sure that we subject a process to rumors and speculation, or do we ensure we give a fair and non-prejudicial hearing?
You're saying so much to us this morning, but you're not directly answering the questions.
No, I am answering the question. So it's a question of whether we are going to give a fair hearing, have a cabinet and follow the process.
No, that's not the
and
question
those
we asked. Lamana was asking about what are the allegations, so not the tribunal itself. Okay. What are the allegations?
So if you are listening to me, Fibian, I first said to Lamgana, these allegations, we're not going to comment on them because by law, it is prejudicial to the tribunal. And even the rights to access...
hold on, I really don't understand. I really don't understand.
Me neither,
how can't the public understand that a public officer is being suspended for investigation and the public cannot understand
what she's investigating
what she did?
Yes. The reason because the moment those allegations, you subject them, okay, or you comment on them, or you make them publicly discussed, they become prejudicial to the outcome of the tribunal. But let me also follow. That's why I said I am here with the law. If you go to the Rights to Access Information Act, 2013, Section 18, and I read for you, the duty to disclose information shall not apply if or to the extent that compliance with Section 2 would or could reasonably be expected to cause serious prejudice to A, the investigation and detection of crime, B, the apprehension and protection of and prosecution of offenders, or C, matters that are sub judice. So these are matters that are sub judice because they are going to be before a tribunal. And therefore, by law, we are not permitted to comment on these matters.
Agreeing with you on that, Yusuf, we're not asking you what are the evidences held against them. What we're asking is, what are they investigated for? Is it misappropriation of the funds that were allocated to the institution for running costs, or is it the new, because again we've learned that the 2020 Auditor General's report was just few days or weeks from being released before the suspension. Is it the content of that 2020 Auditor General's report, which I am aware must have circulated to the government because they send out these things before it's been made public? Is it the content of the 2020 Auditor General's report that she's being investigated for, or is it misappropriation of the funds allocated to the institution? What is it exactly?
So let me answer your question. There are allegations of misconduct and lack of professional practice. Those are what generally she's going to be inquired into by the tribunal. What I would not do, so in as much as we have a duty, that's why I quoted for you the right to access information, which gives us duty to inform the public about what is happening. It is this same law that stipulates in section 18 that where that information will cause serious prejudice on the mark of the sub-judicial, we should not disclose this information.
That was a submission from Yusuf Koketoma Sandi, who is the presidential spokesman and press secretary on the decision of President Bill to suspend the Auditor General and one of our deputies indefinitely. Questions around the allegations. What are the allegations? What would the tribunal be investigating? According to the presidential spokesman, those allegations would not be made public, because it would even be in violation of the right to access information.
The Constitution does specify certain things. They cannot go beyond it. If you look at the Constitution, 130, I think 137, something like that, it should either be on inability to perform the functions because of a body reasons, or mental or misconduct.
Right.
And it says, this is very interesting, that it should be confined, that is, should be confined only to those reasons.
Yes.
It's a very technical thing.
And these guys are now saying it's as a result of professional misconduct.
Well, I don't know. I'm just telling you, I speak here as a lawyer.
Yeah.
That's why I say I don't mix politics with law, although my friend, but that's another matter. I'm trying to say, no, it's very interesting, Mara.
Yes.
And it says you cannot remove the person unless, look, I've got it here, it's very interesting.
Right.
Again, I just wanted to
let me just finish with you. Just a minute. I read it twice over, please, okay? Subject to the provisions of this section, the Auditor General may be removed from office only for inability to perform the functions of his office, whether arising from infirmity of body or mind, or from misconduct, and shall not be so removed save in accordance with the provision of this section. It's a very, very important section.
Yes, specific.
Yes, but a lot of our colleagues, they just talk blah, 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 as that girl says in this, what you call it, that climate change. We should leave certain things to lawyers. I'm sorry.
Okay.
This is important, sir.
I understand quickly.
Because if you have a decision which does not go by this, it could shock people, because they're supposing, we cannot find anything because it's not consistent with the provisions of the Constitution. Why will they be able to argue it? When you're not, there's certain things, you leave it to us. That's why we studied. But everybody is, I know what I'm not saying we're superior.
I understand. No,
he knows what I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying. So as we talk about these allegations and basically with the provision of the Constitution as giving reasons why the Auditor General should be removed. Now, a friend of mine was telling me, basically, I was pressing, I needed to know, what are the allegations? What are the things that these two people have been investigated for? And what he shared with me, basically, he said they're investigating the Auditor General, Madam Lara Taylor-Pierce, on allegations of procurement irregularities, conflict of interest, and professional misconduct. And for Tamba Momo, interestingly, what he is saying that, of course, the Auditor General, according to my source, is telling me that the Auditor General is accused of violating the Financial Management Act of 2016, the Financial Management and Responsibility Act of 2017, and the National Public Procurement Act of 2016. And you were talking about the recruitment of private firms, and so he's saying the recruitment of private audit firms by the Supreme Audit Authority did not follow procurement rules according to reports. And for Tamba Momo, here he is saying Okay, he also mentioned
That's the deputy.
No, yes, Tambawambo is the deputy.
Okay.
But Madam Lara, is saying that the initial refusal to comply with the legal opinion of the Solicitor General to set up a single treasury account for payment of audit fees was strongly opposed by the Ministry of Finance, of course, basically, which led to the intervention of the Speaker of Parliament. Tambawambo, there are allegations that he might be a member of several boards of directors of government and government-assisted secondary schools, which falls under the audit mandate of Audit Service Sierra Leone, and for them this is clearly seen as conflict of interest.
Samuel, I have to react to a number of things that was said by the press secretary. He's a great friend of mine. I have enormous respect for that young man.
Sandy,
yes, he's a very competent young man, but there are certain things that are wrong in his interpretation. I mean, he considered that, in fact, it was the letter that came from the Secretary to President, directed to the board chair, that inspired the suspension.
That's bad.
And that's a significant departure from constitutional prescription.
Right.
And we're not going to make light of deviation from constitution, right? Why the framers, why Parliament will put together a document and call it the Constitution, we're bound to follow every letter of the Constitution. So it's not up to the whims of a certain person to say, oh, since I am given the power to suspend at 3 o'clock, I can suspend at 1 a.m. No. The Constitution says you should suspend at 3 p.m. You cannot suspend at 12 a.m. That is a constitutional transgression, right? And that is not a, what you call, you know, an insignificant matter.
It's not discretionary.
It's quite significant, because it says that, and this is important because, again, it was being pressed about what are these allegations, what are these allegations. And for goodness sake, in the Constitution, section 23(5), it spells out a number of rights of accused person. The very first right that an accused has is a right to be informed in his own language of the offense for which he is charged. That is your very first charge, to be told the allegation against you. And we would beg the government to know the allegation about, the allegation levied against the most respected public servant in a nation. There should not be any investigation by ambush.
Are you surprised? Because if you take a look at Basita Michael's resignation letter,
correct. I was going to.
She mentioned that, of course, there was lack of. It was clearly absent that the allegations were not presented to the commission.
Correct.
And so the commission should not have even gone ahead setting up a tribunal.
I agree with Basita 100%. As a matter of fact, once the investigation. Once the Judicial Legal Service Commission sends a notification to the President, the full length of the allegation ought to have been presented. As at the time of suspension, the Auditor General and a deputy ought to have known every syllable of the allegation against them. But up to the point of suspension, up to the point of the notification to the commission, the allegations were not known. And that's why Basita said, at this stage, we cannot continue, we cannot give our blessings to this tribunal without full knowledge of the allegation. And I think that was quite clearly, you know, the reference to the Freedom of Information Act, etc. said that does not apply. When it comes to allegation, it should be known. It is not one of those things that are affected or covered by the sub judice principle in law. To be notified of the allegation is the most basic rights that any accused person has under the sun. The same and similar principles apply to even administrative procedure. Once, for example, investigation is launched against you, as at the time of the launch, you ought to be notified of every syllable of the allegation against you. But in this case, unless, at this point that you read out perhaps a privilege communication that was sent to you,
Right.
this public is still groping in the dark in terms of what the allegations
still
are.
in dark. So
and I think that makes the entire process very suspicious. And that is why we say it's an affront to democracy. And I agree with Lawrence, who said that if you're investigating one of the most trusted professionals in this country, the allegation should be out there at the very dawn.
So before bringing in Lawyer Gabido, let me ask you again this question. Because when the names of the tribunal members were announced, you were, one of, you were...
I think I
amongst the
first tweeted about
exactly. And if I even attributing the names to where they belong,
Oh, yes,
and already whether or not that questions the integrity and the independence or fairness of the entire investigation. 2 out of the 3 members, are associated with the Attorney General, which by extension is government.
Correct.
So, so where does that put the tribunal?
Samuel, I think we're just going it's another wrong of wrong. It's another step of wrong, right? The suspension process was wrongful. The process by which that suspension was triggered was wrongful. But even the tribunal itself. Let's assume for a second that those procedural blunders can be cured. Let's assume. I have said that it cannot be cured. Once there's a constitutional misstep, it makes the entire process flawed. From the suspension to the trial, everything is flawed, right? But let's assume, so when the names came out, I said to myself, I was a member of the Attorney General's firm. I was a member. I was there when one of the tribunal members, was there, still there, as a matter of fact. So I know the firm. So I came out clearly to say, how come? You have a member of the AG's firm. The AG is a complainant. The AG would have to present findings on behalf of government. He has one of his partners in his firm sitting on the tribunal. He has a consultant who reports to the AG every morning, sits on the tribunal. And somebody said, but why are you picking up these very small issues? I said, let me paint this to you. You have a matter. You have a matter against your, let's say against your stepbrother, right? And your stepmother sits on the tribunal against you. So, oh, Mara, now I understand that. I say it's identical, right? It's similar. So the AG is presenting facts, the allegation, prosecuting before the tribunal, and the AG appears before some of the members of his firm.
Does that mean they can be influenced?
No. So in terms of bias, so you do not wait for the actual bias. Once there's reasonable perception of bias, then that tribunal is impugned. So you do not wait. You do not wait for the outcome from the stepmother. You do not wait. Once the stepmother sits on that chair, you object. Say, I have a matter with your son, and you're sitting on the tribunal.
But the stepmother can still be upright to judge the matter.
So it's not
fairly.
So once it comes to bias, you leave out the issue of integrity. Once there's an apprehension that there's a possibility or reasonable possibility of bias, that person is disqualified.
Right.
You do not wait to test that person's integrity. They could be a saint, but they could equally be a villain.
Right.
So you do not wait. Once there's perception, that person is disqualified.
Lawyer Gabido, let me bring you in. The tribunal has been set, and 3 members have been appointed by the president.
Yes.
And 2 already have been questioned. So where does that put fairness in its investigation process?
Okay, well, I saw the list on Friday, 3 people.
Yes.
Let us take them one by one. Justice Naomi Jones, the former Supreme Court judge, is a woman of impeccable character. I know her.
Yeah, I practiced before. I don't know.
She's fantastic.
Yes.
I'm not saying she's perfect.
Yeah.
She's very good. I know her. The second one, Mr. Farmer.
Yes.
Well, my relation with Mr. Farmer is that I did not teach him, but I remember when I went to the law school, 1991, I think he just was the first set of people who qualified. He has worked at the law officers department throughout his life. He's a very competent man. I did not know that he reports. I know he's a consultant, but I never knew he reports to the AG, which my friend has told me. In terms of competence, I think he's very good. He has appeared in courts in Sierra Leone, in ECOWAS courts. Very well experienced in the law. I cannot make any judgment on his personal life. As I say, I can only say what I know him as a lawyer.
Right.
I know he's very competent, but since he says that he's reporting to the AG, I think that's left for the lawyers to take objection if at the tribunal, if they're not satisfied. But I cannot make that. I never knew, because he was working with them. Yes. So, yeah, no, I'm just saying there are certain things, you know, which I'm not aware. And
you imagine he reports to the AG on the very morning.
Well, that's what you say. I cannot comment on that.
He's to appear before them at 10 o'clock. He reports at 7 to the AG.
I will not dispute what you say. I can only speak.
And I have not questioned his competence.
No.
I have not questioned. He's an excellent lawyer.
He's a brilliant lawyer.
He's a very brilliant lawyer.
Very brilliant.
But in these circumstances, I think...
when we had that ECOWAS matter, the Samsung matter, these are the type of people you see there. When former Attorney General refused to go there.
Yes.
I said to him, why don't you send
him?
Farmer?
Very brilliant.
Yeah, well, that is why nowadays, when he comments, I respect him, I just avoid. Because that was a matter of clear professional negligence. You cannot have a matter in the ECOWAS court, you don't send anybody, you say you don't recognize them. And with respect, you see, when you're criticizing, don't forget also what you are also doing, because we know each other in this business.
Yes.
That's what, as I say, we're not interested in that. Hey, now we point finger at me, say, make me say point finger at you.
Go ahead.
That's more country. The third one is Abu King. I taught Abu King at the law school. Reasonably good. Then he left, he went to the Gambia. He went to the Gambia, I think it was either a judge or a magistrate. Magistrate. Then he came back.
And there's that dig up there from the Gambia already on social media about
well, I don't honestly.
Yet we're to confirm.
Well, I only know, no, he definitely worked in the Gambia.
Yeah.
Yes,
No, I know, I saw him in the Gambia.
Yeah.
That's why I said I don't know whether it was a magistrate or a judge. I'm very careful with my words.
Go ahead.
Then when he came back, I did not see him until he met me one day. And I said, I've been seeing you very concerned with religious affairs. I said, well, you know, Okuma, but what you going to do with, what do they call this sect of Muslims? They break away from the Ahmadiyya, yes. I said, my friend, I've always respected you know them good Oku Creole and Afro-Bebo. Now I am with the Ahmadiyyas. So I just...
So now he now works with the AG's farm.
I'm coming to that. I'm just giving background. So until recently, when I was told that he works with the AG's farm. Now, let me put it this way. It's very difficult to attribute bias purely because you work in the AG's farm. My own view will be it's entirely up to the lawyers at the tribunal who can make these objections. So you have a right to make these objections. And you substantiate them with case authorities. That is how our law would go. That's the best thing to me. You can make your submission, ABCD, you refer to ABCD cases. I remember when Baton Macaulay was appearing before his mother.
Mr. Gabinion, the point is, don't we have other excellent lawyers who are qualified?
I agree.
I mean, the other day somebody asked me, well, give us names. I gave about 7 names.
Why do you think both of us are sitting here?
I gave about 7 names.
Excellent lawyers to come and discuss. They won't even come. They invite them. Do they come here? They don't. No, you want to be honest? Yes. They don't come. They're not interested. And say, I mean, the money no more interested in. I'm just giving you an answer. No. We have a problem. That's why when this young man was talking, I said, well, not seen that yet. We have a problem. We have a problem with service delivery in Sierra Leone. I'm not making excuse for anybody. Apart from any place where probably a lot of money is spent, some of our colleagues are just not interested. Do you know how many people have said, let's have a bad journal? Do you know how many people have said, let's start law reporting? With respect, I'm afraid I teach at Troat because now some people are saying, what do you still teach people? He said, all the young people, they're now in the produce. They're not the landlord and money then. That is what people say to us now. But if some of us were this illusion, you know how much I do.
I know.
Some of us would have withdrawn. I would have withdrawn many times if I listened to. But the basic thing is, If, in fact, apart from Justice Naomi Matsiri Jones, if any lawyer thinks that an element of bias or there might be perception, then you have a right to raise it at the tribunal. Also, as a preliminary objection.
But does it diminish the credibility in your eyes? I think
Well, I don't know. It depends on the ruling. Because you see, some of the things you said, I cannot dispute it. Because I don't know. That's why I consider to what you say.
Yeah.
As for the judge, you can put my head on a block and put a machete there. I can any day, you know that.
Oh, no, I practiced before. I think
Farmer is also extremely brilliant. The question of him reporting to the AG, I did not know. But in terms of competence, it was one of the first set of people who graduated law in Sierra Leone. He's been consistent. I've seen his work locally and at ECOWAS.
All right.
That's all I can say.
Lawrence, let me ask you this question. Since you are of the firm belief that the decision to suspend the Auditor General is purely political, where does that put good governance, democracy, accountability, and transparency?
It's like you, there's one, I've forgotten this cruel parable, but we are going backwards. The TRC report, the TRC report said that one of the factors responsible for the Civil War is that the judiciary and that of the parliament became a mere pawn in the hands of the executive. Now, when you have a situation where a ruling government is using bad precedents to justify present wrongs, it tells you a democracy is under attack. Let's go back to the Samsumana issue Lawyer Gabidon referenced. Samsumana was illegally and unconstitutionally removed, in my view, because the Constitution prescribes explicitly how and what procedures can be followed. The Supreme Court sadly upheld that decision, a judicial fox pass, we may call it. But the opposition then, SLPP, rejected that outcome. I was saying that, oh yes, they were averse to the decision of the court, the Supreme Court, outcome of the judgment. Samsumana went to the ECOWAS court, and the ECOWAS court ruled otherwise. Everybody was happy. But when they came into governance, they refused to accept that Samsumana was a legitimate vice president and that his removal was unconstitutional. Sometime this week, the APC held a press conference. I listened to the report on 98.1 and I heard very clear the APC Secretary General saying that this government should not use the bad precedents of the APC regime. No, yes, I heard it on 98.
No, I'm just making a joke.
Yes, he said it.
It is a joke. No, carry on. No, I'm sorry, I'm not demeaning you.
Yeah,
I believe you.
You also talked about some lawyers or civil society that are suddenly gone taciturn on this particular issue and so many other issues.
Yes, I agree with you. That's what
in previous years, we all know if such issues happen, you will see an array of press releases, a plethora of them.
But many have come out.
Listen, those who have come out, we know them, but we also know that many of them have not come out to state a position, and those guys were very much active and should I say, they were very much active and talking and working when issues of constitutional blunder, mishaps, and were happening in the previous administration. Even the media as well. Let me be frank.
Yes.
Yeah? We have people who have not been consistent. Some people now see
thank you.
that, oh, it is our turn or it is our time, therefore we should support whatever decision, right or wrong. And it is bad. So we are not making progress. There are people who sacrificed their lives for us to enjoy the peace we are enjoying today.
You're right.
It is our own responsibility to protect it, to guard against the abuse of power and tyranny. Listen, when Donald Trump became a thorn on the flesh of the Americans, when he was so much ingrained with the excessive use of executive powers and so on, the press was one of the bodies or institutions that held Donald Trump to account. In fact, it was the American press that influenced impeachment on Donald Trump.
All right.
But here in Sierra Leone, when you express such views, oh, you are a journalist, you should not be saying that. I've had, or should I say, received so much.
You're safe, don't worry. You're safe.
Hate me. We all receive it.
In recent times, especially that
You're
article
safe.
I wrote on this Auditor General
But we all
removal.
get
People that don't cost me plenty one. Yeah? Some people are even now aligning me to APC. And I look at them, I said, go back to the records since 2016, 2014, 2015, 2017. How much articles I wrote on governance, on accountability, on human rights when the APC was in governance. And I said to people and my colleague journalists, journalism is not limited to news reporting. Earlier journalists like Kovac and Rosenthal in their book Elements of Journalism,
Yeah.
they said that a watchdog role goes beyond news reporting to include watching over the powerful few in society on behalf of the many to guard against tyranny and the abuse of power. So it is my responsibility, and it's a collective responsibility, to put checks on government where government tends
Outside, the
to
media
abuse
the media is listening. The media is listening. Stay with us. Stay with us. Let's bring in our viewers and our listeners to participate in the show. I have hundreds of messages on Facebook. Time will never permit me to go through all of them, so I start by apologizing before I go through some of them. And the number for you to call and be part of There Is a Change today is +232 30 121 619 +232 30 121 619. And Mustafa Masako is saying the implications over the suspension of the Auditor General will send a negative signal about Sierra Leone, taking into account the work of the Auditor General. All right. Good evening, AYV on Sunday.
Hello. Good evening, Samuel.
Yes.
This is Samuel Cole from Freetown.
Go ahead, Mr. Cole.
Samuel, the whole issue of this Auditor General's suspension is very unfortunate. You see, these are some of the issues that brought the war. And we remember during those days when issues like this comes up, at the end of the day, we saw a lot of negativity comes up. So the issue of constitutional abuse with this government should be checked. You know, it does not send a very good signal internationally. If what is going to guide us, protect us, and you swear on that constitution that you will protect, then at the end of the day, you bastardize it just like that. I mean, it's unfortunate.
All right.
Let this issue don't get us to where we came from.
Thank you.
Please. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll give each caller a minute, please. Hello.
Hello?
Good evening. AYV on Sunday.
Yeah. Good evening. Ori, you call from Lungi.
Go ahead.
I want to tell thank you to the journalist and Mr. Mara, but at least the interested also make the country get better democracy. You see, we government for always know say then get responsibility for take care of we and make them always remember say institutions the way they guide them. matter, and plenty of we not glad because we will ask we say we country to go. If we government where institutions like the audit report, the monitor them, to make them take them with the money, that particular institution they come out with, then Uda will come again as Auditor General, where you will get interest for we the ordinary people them. But all this start because President Bio take power 2018. The first move where he take when we believe that he wrong, that will start all
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, AYVN Sunday.
Yeah, good evening, Samuel. This is Anamta from Central.
Go ahead.
First and foremost, I want to thank you very much for the zeal and the enlightenment way the television and radio they give to we. Honestly, I don't listen to the panelists. Gabidon, the amount of high respect, and I told the line with her mostly. What in people that they fail to understand, mostly this country highly politicized. The kind of Gabidon talk up. Be it lawyers, be it civil societies, be it journalists. To be honest with you, the only thing we mean that admonish people, let them be ordered with them God and conscience where they serve. For say salute, a big part every one of us. Salute, that the biggest thing where you think for force, if it's your party or your personal and government, that's me that admonish them people here.
All right.
Honestly, Samuel.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, AYV on Sunday. Hello.
Samuel, good evening.
Yes, your name and where calling us from, please.
Please
be audible a bit.
Yeah, Samuel, in connection to the Auditor General, as a civil servant, Auditor General understand that that's the positive over here. The necessity of what comes to power, then the servant institution. But one thing I want to ask is the Auditor General serving the army as a member of the army by scrutiny tribunal, because in the army there is what we call tribunal. In civil servant there is what we call court, jury. So I want to know the difference between tribunal and
It's not a court. It's not a court martial. Good evening, AYV on Sunday.
Hello?
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Mr. Marai Lawrence, I don't want any person distract you now from what I'm pointing on the is. People we don't suffer in the hands of auditors. No will ever no will ever oppose the decision the government takes. So we're a wrong decision. You understand? People we don't suffer in the hands of Auditor General, so they no will ever when they see the crusade, they start saying people. This is political. The one way to defend this thing, the way to defend the lawyer, this is a lawyer, and no answer, a minimum also. It's all political. They are political. It's political. It is wrong. The issue is like how I talk to them. We're not civil society there, like this country. And please, Mr. Bangura, we're a peaceful citizen. We're not a journalist, but some of we know the issues. I'm over 40 years, and only for all 100 years for I know this alone politics. And only for all 100 years when I want to give you opportunity. Also that when they bring me the missiles, some of them people are where they can. They will hold this point today because of this government in power. When other government can, that's the point they will be able to answer this government we do. Not so that day. We want to look at bad example.
Okay.
We look at good example. We know the civil society today.
Thank you.
When they argue for some corruption case September, when they talk on anti-corruption stuff, now.
Would accommodate 5 more calls, please. Good evening, AYV on Sunday.
Yeah, good evening, Samuel.
Yeah. I'll drop this call. When you want to be part of the conversation, move away from your radio or TV set. You're still there, please. Move away from your TV or radio set if you want to be part of the conversation, please. The number is +232 301 21619. We'll take 4 more calls because of time, please. We have some messages to go through. Abbas Abib Koka is saying, good evening, AYV on Sunday.
Yeah, hello, good evening, Samuel.
Yes.
This is Mr. Kamara from the Texas.
Go ahead.
Yeah, God bless Mr. Gabidon for good practice where he do for this lobbyism for this country. And if you look at the Constitution states and they clearly say the president is mandate for hire and fire anybody. So at the field social state other lawyers in the camp, the map, they argue the constitution. That also says I don't only work on constitution. And I'm glad the one way Mr. Gabidon tell the other man say, let me left that political constitution. Let me go peacefully to the constitution, see the constitution says. I know say the president gets wrong backing of lawyers, the way they direct them for what gate of the law. And not just take decision so the Auditor General will not see how they end that day.
All right, thank you. A minute each. Good evening, AYV on Sunday.
Good evening.
Yes.
I just want to ask there, the Auditor General, they get power of the Parliament, where they say the Parliament involved in corruption and the corruption investigate them. We just don't understand. Now, human being is answerable to Sierra Leone. They don't stack up. It's on suspension. Why is it Sierra Leone thinks that don't be fire on the mountain? The woman on suspension. They go through the process. If they're not guilty, then they're left. And what's the problem with this country? People don't like to ask questions again. When we talk of accountability, we want to come to the people to be accountable. Then more we go ask Auditor General questions. Everybody that gets fired now in the country, hey, it's wrong, it's wrong. What do you work about that? So that's what it's for now. Anybody can do anything here because of a position high.
All right.
The Parliament of Sierra Leone, they accuse them. Oh God, Sierra Leone.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's take this last call from Germany. Good evening, AYV on Sunday.
Yeah, hello, Samuel. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Thanks for taking my call. My point is.
Go ahead.
My point that I'm making is, Samuel, why is it that the Auditor General and her deputy have not been told about what they have been investigated about? That is what I don't understand. I think they should have been told, well, you're going to be suspended for AYV, as our journalist was saying, and then an investigation, the tribunal can go ahead and do what they want to do. But these people are going to go to a tribunal for something that hasn't been told. Does that make any sense? I don't know, you seem to be an old lawyer. I've known you for years. During those Justice Bankole Thompson and Time Wooden have been High Court judge. I mean, this is simple. I mean, the people are accused of something, and they're not done. What? Thank you.
All right. That's the last lucky caller for tonight. Let me run through a few messages. Abbas Habib Koka Bangali is saying, before this woman, it was another woman who was sacked by the APC government. We didn't see any activism going on. I can't even remember her name. So let us don't be distracted by the so-called activisms or activities of interest, okay? Ronald Georgetown is saying that Constitution has been used like tissue paper by successive governments to use as and when they see, okay. And bravo, my good lawyer Gabidon, Mohamed Masako is sending a compliment there. Alhaji Ibrahim Sori Kamara is saying politics has killed this so-called, okay. Can lawyer Gabidon say which part of the Constitution supports his opinion? Samuel Y. Angulese is saying, they got opportunity to review the Constitution, but they never did. Karimu Kenneth is saying, Sierra Leoneans, don't be distracted by the tribunal set up by President Bill to investigate our Finance Auditor General. It's a ploy to take your minds off our audit reports. The publication of it, it's expected to implicate high-level officers, including the presidency and his government. Alimami Issa is saying, Sierra Leone is a country where people go to employment, where people go to employ lawyer for family issues. Are any of you guys constitutional lawyer or international lawyers? Interesting. Patrick Rui. Procedures were breached. That's all. Lamzo D is saying, Yusuf says, Sise Yusufu, sometimes I don't understand why we cannot, okay, I will hold it there. So is there a specific procedure enshrined in the Constitution, or people are just focusing on the procedure as per precedent? There is, I'm sure. Lawyer Mara has gone through that. Lawyer Francis Gabidon, okay, will not take that. I'm afraid our international callers, please, will not take any more calls. I'm afraid we will not take any more calls. Yes, we have a lot of them from Germany, US, UK calling. All this, Bora, is a result of the APC manipulation because This is not too clear. Lawyer Gabiden, we're talking about the legitimacy of the suspension of the AG. It's wrong. It's wrong. That's from Ambassador Mike Joseph Kanu. Deputy Minister of the legitimacy. The Deputy Minister of Justice Napoleon's letter to the Chief Justice dated on Monday, 8 November this year. The Auditor General was suspended on the Thursday, 11th of this November. So basically, it took 2 days from the day the Deputy Minister sent his letter to the Chief Justice and the day the Auditor General was suspended. It's established that before the Auditor General be removed, there be a committee of the Judicial and Legal Service Commission members who are charged to investigate the Auditor General of any wrongdoing. After the investigation, they should present their findings to the President and recommendations on whether the Auditor General should be removed or not. Now, the question is, when was the committee set up to investigate the Auditor General, when in fact she's not aware of any investigation? Who were the jail SC members that investigated the Auditor General? What were some of the recommendations to the President, if any? The process to appoint members of the committee to investigate normally takes days, if not weeks, because suspending the Auditor General is equal to suspending a High Court judge. An investigation lasts for weeks, sometimes months, to investigate and make recommendations. Unless the setting up of the committee to investigate and conclude the investigation can only take 2 to 3 days. The bottom line here is President Bill's removal of the Auditor General was illegal because he failed to follow due processes. Ronald Georgetown, I'm going to take 5 more messages. You guys would have to forgive me. Ronald Georgetown is saying, yes, I really believe if the executive has nothing to hide, the report must not be delayed, tribunal or not. Ibrahim Sharif is saying, our brother in the studio should know that law does not have a common sense, but we interpret and apply what is in black and white, the law, period. Lawyer Gabidon, I said it, thank you for your patriotic stance. Amar Alpha is saying Sierra Leone is a sovereign state, and its Sierra Leoneans are not above the law of the state, irrespective of one's position, and the day of impunity has gone under this new dispensation. Right? The suspension of the Auditor General is unconstitutional. President Bill needs to go back to the drawing board to return the Auditor General to office. Abdul Tured. And last message I'll take is from David Stanley Coker. There is no necessity whatsoever to bring up hints of lawyers who failed to speak up during the unlawful suspension of the former Vice President Sam Sumana and the highly suspicious termination of the Auditor General's service. They are both wrong. This is the bottom line and nothing else. Guys would have to forgive me, please. I cannot go through even 1/3 of the messages sent here on this platform. We have to wrap up the conversation. So, Lawyer Gabidon, with all the submissions that have come up in from our viewers and listeners and what we've discussed here, where do you see, or how soon do you expect the tribunal to conclude its investigation and for things to get back to normal?
Samuel, from the messages, I can see the views of many people. Obviously, to be honest, it seems as if quite a number of people are against what has happened. But you know, as I've said to you, there are 2 things in our society. I'm an old man now, I'm nearly 80, not believe it. I have seen in Sierra Leone, if you are politically popular, or if you're politically, let me put it, if you're neutral, probably, once a stance is taken politically, and there are many instances, it's not the first, even under Shaka Stevens, Auditor General was under Momo as well. My view of life is at my age, and with all my learning, and I will live abroad, there must be a time when I will have to separate politics from the law. That's the way I was brought up. My young friend here is a radical brilliant. I don't mind, but me, as far as I'm concerned, I think, and I would like it tested in the court, whether the suspension of the lady, I know her very well. In fact, I'll tell you this, I'm probably something heavily related to her. If you ask me as a lawyer, I don't think it was unconstitutional, period. I'm not going to the politics of it. Those who want to go into the fine, there are many avenues to go into the politics. Go to court, test it in court, call a meeting, street way, whatever. If you ask me as a lawyer, I cannot deviate outside law. I had somebody talking about legitimate. You know, I don't want to argue with some of these people. As I say, interpreting the Constitution, as Mara said, is different from interpreting the statutes, Pepper versus Hart. I cannot quote all these cases. They won't know what I'm saying. I'm sorry. Probably just a few people. So let me don't waste time. As far as I'm known, whether Matter Bill is popular, whether it's SAPUPC, to me, is immaterial. And let me tell people what they don't know. The final say in this matter is not left with the president. The final say in this matter is left with Parliament. People don't even understand what they're talking, blah, 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 blah. When you look at this whole thing, the final say is not with the president. When I told a colleague the other day, it was shocked. They don't read. I'm being serious. They just talk because they don't like the man or they don't like us. I'm not here for it. Nothing like me back with him. As far as I'm concerned as a lawyer, you ask me to interpret, that's how I see it. If you think I'm wrong, go to court, get an injunction or whatever, or a declaration. But what people fail to realize is, at the end of the day, after the tribunal has given its decision, the final say is with Parliament. That's all I want to say. Those who don't accept, well, they can jump into the Atlantic Ocean.
And with this Parliament, we
well,
have...
well, no, because you see, it's sad when you talk in these things that are so clear and they can read it. They're still arguing and then so they insult you. It's sad because I thought this was a civilized society. Look at the man from Germany talking about legitimacy. What am I going to argue with him? If I refer to the case of Pepper versus Hart, does he know what I'm talking about? We have a problem. We have to educate people in this country. Let me talk about
let me bring you in.
A number of things that have been said. And to be honest with you, it breaks my heart that Lawrence was trying to paint a picture of how the auditors have, suddenly become endangered species. And quite clearly, they are very important in the governance landscape to ensure that we do not only ask executive holders of offices in terms of how our collective funds are spent, but also to ensure there's accountability in the process. And I don't think that Audit Service Salion should be given a lesser pedestal of importance. Like, for example, the ACC. They should have equal, not only recognition, protection of their officers. It's what we call an integrity institution. It's an accountability institution. The same with procurement, public procurement authority. Same with the Anti-Corruption Commission. These are integrity institutions. So that we shouldn't hear stories of fight between and amongst, for example, Minister of Finance fighting the Audit Service Salion, the Anti-Corruption Commission fighting the Audit Service Salion. No, this is an institution that ought to be protected. Now, coming to constitutional, and somebody mentioned we international lawyers, I studied not only human rights law, but also democratization. That's why I call myself a good governance activist, democracy activist. And a good chunk of that master's program is constitutional law. And Mr. Gabi don't know, I have several matters in the Constitution, in the Supreme Court. So I don't just come on TV and argue these constitutional points. I also litigate them. I have matters that have been languishing somewhere in the shelves. They can't assign them. I said so. They can't assign them. Somebody said, you should also take this to Supreme Court.
We cannot use this forum for that.
Yes. You want me to spend 2 or 5 papers in the Supreme Court? You'd have to spend at least a month or more dedicated attention to detail. So it's long, elaborate man hours.
And at the end of the day,
and then you file your papers and then they put it aside, they shove it aside.
Right.
I mean, just to make the point that it is very, very important that we treat constitutional matters constitutionally and not politically. And Lawrence has alluded to the fact that there are many political undertones in this decision. I would not disagree with that, because if you look at antecedent events, all what happened between Minister of Finance, etc., the tussle between ACC and Audit. So all of that could be seen as a stage being set for this suspension. And I have just read the letter that was then directed to the board. In fact, in that letter, which Sarah I has just published on Twitter, the Secretary to President wrote to the chairman of the board indicating that the Attorney General has been instructed to set up the tribunal. That is also constitutionally wrong. The AG does not have the power to set up the tribunal. It is in fact the President who does have the power to set up. Having received notification from the Commission, he sets up the tribunal. So all of these correspond, and this is why, I mean, the government is afraid to bring all these facts to the fore, because the many facts there, the many constitutional transgressions I can easily point out. I can easily point out. And let's assume for a second that all of us, we're all fallible, we're all imperfect, right? That there are serious allegations against the Auditor General and a deputy. Why would you be, why is it that government is not coming out with all these facts about these allegations? Because the slower it takes to bring all of this to the fore, the more suspicions brew overnight that, in fact, this is a calculated attempt to ensure that they remove the Auditor General because the 2020 audit report is due.
Yeah.
And again, the timing is wrong. Again, the timing, if we had had an incident in February, say for example in February, the suspicions will not be as heightened as they are now, right? But on the eve of the publication of 2020 and we move, and I cited this example in my piece.
Right.
I said, imagine tomorrow the Electoral Commissioner, Mr. Conenau, is to announce presidential results. Tonight, the incumbent fires that. It is akin to this. Imagine the Supreme Court judges have had arguments on a presidential petition, petition of presidential results. On the very night before they are due to deliver their judgment, all of them are fired. Imagine. So this is exactly what has happened. On the eve of publication of the 2020 audit report, with all the scandalous publications that we have read, i.e. in terms of monies being spent recklessly, borrowing the words of the president, he said, like drunken sailors. That was his signature line. You know, when he was blasting the APC, for example. You know, and some of us fell for that. We felt that.
With all of this, Lawyer Gabidon just mentioned, at the end of the day, the buck stops with Parliament.
Correct. Yes.
And now we have this Parliament. Should we be hopeful?
Again, that's again brings us to the issue of the 10 parliamentarians being removed from Parliament. You know, democracy is such a governance system. If we just pay attention, not only pay attention to the details, but adhere to the basic tenets, it would do us a million good, really. Because what happened during the 2018 election, the electorate elected a parliament that represented the general desire of the populace. That you could have a presidency from a certain political party, but you have a majority of the parliament being from the opposition. That could have placed a check on, but unfortunately we had litigation, and after that litigation, by judicial wand, you know, 10 people were removed and 10 people were sent in. So we have a parliament now, and I'm told that the number is such that they have a 2/3 majority, and that's what you need.
I think they're equal, virtually equal now.
One is 58, one is 57. Yes.
There's not even,
you know,
when you look at the parliamentary politics, when you look at the division among the C4C, look at
it's not easy to get it to
yeah, I know it's not easy, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, I mean, with the incumbents, with all the resources they have, I mean, these, some of these people could be bought overnight.
I asked that question.
No, I am
I asked
saying,
that question
yes,
because we've seen where agreements have gone to Parliament, where things or other members of Parliament belonging to the opposition political parties have challenged and do not want those things to get. At the end of the day, even when the loudest of voice would come from the nays, I mean, the eyes would have it.
Yes.
So should we be hopeful?
I
that
think
going
we
to that
should
house?
be worried. We should be worried as a nation. Worried because I think 20 years after, almost 20 years after the end of the civil conflict, we should be exporting lessons on good governance to other countries. We should not be an example, a textbook example of all the egregious conduct of governance. We should not. I mean, people should come here to Mr. Gabinon, for example, for lessons on good governance. We should be hosting dialogue on good governance. We should be dishing out these lessons across Africa.
What Rwanda is doing.
Yes, but unfortunately, look at us, Mr. Gabinon, at his age, we're still discussing constitutional deviation, constitutional transgression. He should be retired, giving lessons on good governance. You know, 20 years with all the money spent on special purpose area, with all the money spent on accountability mechanisms and what have you. We have excellence here, Unions, Samuel. I think we should be worried because I realize that from the Constitution, once the tribunal comes out with the decision, that decision is put before Parliament for a 2/3 majority. Yeah. We've had instances in which but obviously if the decision, for example, is that, you know, the allegations amount to misconduct, then could be put before Parliament. But if they come out to say no, they have not found anything that could amount to misconduct, then that's it. But I think with Parliament, I mean, my fear is that I'm not sure whether they have adopted you know, and their own electoral system in which because with all this sound
vote.
No, there's a provision for that.
Yes.
For secret ballots.
Secret ballots, but that's not being implemented. So they're still using the voice voting system. Right. And quite clearly, the other day we had the nays being the louder, or the loudest of it, but you know, the other voice got it, you know. I mean, we could have quite a difference in hearing. Yes, we could have difference in hearing. But I think that I'm not hopeful. I just hope that, you know, that this government will look at all the concerns that have been raised, the plethora of press releases. I could vividly remember in 2015 that, I mean, this issue is akin to the Samsumana saga. The number of press releases that came out, right? I think the honorable thing to do, and I think I remember Ibrahim Tommy said on 98.1, you know, that the honorable thing to do in these circumstances is to consider reinstatement, right? At the end of the day, because if at the end of the day the tribunal were to come out, and I have no optimism about the tribunal, noting the membership, I have no optimism. But if the tribunal were to come out and say these allegations do not amount to misconduct, it would be a very bad publicity for government. Okay. So I think all of these cues should be taken. And government can do the honorable thing. Well, we're all humans. Government can come out with a statement to the effect that, oh, we misperceived the facts, and now we think that the Auditor General should be reinstated to continue with the 2020 audit report process. All right. Right? Lawrence? Because once you publish that report and it's scandalous, with all of these optics, it could be even more scandalous.
Lawrence?
Yeah, you said Sarah has published the letter. Now, when you read that letter, it was dated the 9th. Correct. And the Auditor General was only copied in Tambamomo. They were only copied. Correct. And the letter did not specify clearly what allegations they are, being investigated for. And somebody talked about, well, this street lawyer business I referenced. Yes, I mentioned it. And the reason why the reason I said that is because there have been repeated constitutional infractions by successive governments, and these have given rise to, debates, conversation, discourse in public arena. And those issues have now produced the street lawyers I talk about. So that is why everybody has his own interpretation of the law.
No, you're right here. I cannot dispute you.
Again, we've seen press releases. We've not seen press release from those whom we refer to as the moral guarantors of the state, the Interreligious Council. Are they shying away from such a moral and godly responsibility?
They are not lawyers.
They are not lawyers. But in the past, when issues like this came up, they actually came out and state a position, or probably make a request or an appeal to the conscience of government or the public to simmer situations down and what have you. But they have not come out to say anything. That's a worry. That's a worrying thing.
I think our leaders listen to this. You remember, I think with the past government, the past president, I think the leaders don't listen to these religious leaders at all.
But these people are always at State House. They're always there.
Again, another point I want to make again.
I agree with you.
The EU report referenced the NEC, the PPRC, the judiciary, and the police as institutions that is experiencing some form of mistrust. There's a significant distrust in these EMBs. So if we see now the government attacking the audit service, it will amount to state capture.
Yes.
And we have a responsibility to prevent that from happening. We want these institutions to remain as independent in the literal sense of the word, so that we are sure of a democracy, sustainable democracy, sustainable governance system. I think again that there are people who advise the president. This man, Dr. Bright, once said that the government has gone stone deaf.
Oh, Dennis?
Yes.
Dennis.
What happened in Kono the other day should shine the eyes of the president, should open his eyes widely to see things now for himself. I mean, true leaders must be able to distinguish between sincere praise and blind adulation. But I think Mr. President is getting an overdose of the latter. And when that happens, you see leaders taking actions they ought not to have taken. We have come a long way as a country. We were here doing the war. Thankfully, I was born, and I witnessed it, I saw it, I know, experienced the trauma and everything.
Right.
We do not want such situations, God forbid, to happen. But if the government is taking actions or decisions that amount to violation of the Constitution, it sends panic.
Thank you.
I'll just reference just one minute. Quickly. When Donald Trump misbehaved at some point, he had wanted to deport the blacks. The Chief Justice, America, so appointed by Donald Trump, went on air, interpreted the laws, stating that Mr. President does not have the power to do so. When he again wanted to influence the army to protect him, to extend his stay in office,
General scheme.
The head of the army went on air and said that we took an oath not to Mr. President, but to the American Constitution. Similar thing happened in Britain. The head of the police, the chief sheriff, went on air. What precludes the Chief Justice or the judiciary?
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Thank you very much, Lawrence Williams. Thank you very much. That's a question we'll leave with our viewers. Thank you very much. And this is where we end tonight's program. Many thanks to our panelists for giving us their time. We apologize for the absence of a government rep.
But to those of you who listened, who watched, and be part of the show through your messages or calls, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much for the privilege of your company tonight. This has been AYV on Sunday. My name is Samuel Wise-Bangura, and up next is our AYV Primetime News. A repeat of the show comes up on Thursday, 10 p.m. But a fresh edition comes up next week, same time, same station, here on AYV Television, your home of all things credible, factual, and all times balanced news. Take care of yourself, and good night.